Now we have nearly 1 hour for a more general discussion, and we have collected a very qualified, multidisciplinary, I would say, panel here that can provide us with very different perspectives on this subject. And I just want to present the panel very briefly, and you may protest if I say something wrong here. But if we start from the left, from your side, we have Raffaella Ravinette, who you have already heard in the discussion. She is from the Institute of Tropical Medicine in Antwerp, Belgium, an expert on ethical aspects of falsified medicine. She has been working with Médecins Sans Frontières in the ethical committee there. And has also collaborated with Paul Newton that you heard earlier this afternoon. Then Barbro Westerholm, who you all know, member of the parliament, and one of the members of SMER, the Swedish Council on Medical Ethics. Then Henrik Rasmussen, who I just now met, who is a district prosecutor at the International Prosecutor Department here in Stockholm, and he's here to discuss legal aspects. Then we have Erik Blom, who is from the company Inventia. And they have, in a very special project, approached the problem by developing new packaging techniques in the Smedpack project, which is supported by Nova, and you will say a few words about that. Then we have Erik Malmqvist, who you have already heard, and finally, not least, Margareta Troeng-Tullborn. You are professor in general medicine at Lund University, has been the chair of the Swedish Society of Medicine, and you are involved in I call it the Susanne Lundin project. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So we thought that we would just start with some brief reflections on what you have heard already, and then perhaps plunge into some of the questions. Raffaella, do you want to start?
I will try. I'm Italian by nationality, so not very good at speaking shortly, but I will do my best. Mm-hmm. So I'm here because I represent a group which is called QuaMed, and it is a group of North-South network of NGOs and drug procurement centers in the South, who basically shares pool resources and information to try to secure our supply chains. And we have recently also started to look into the database that we have built after 3 to 5 years of audits at distributors and manufacturers working in developing countries. And we will publish this next year, but from unpublished data, I can already say that we have seen that many distributors that work in or for developing countries, whether they are public or private, whether they are international or local, they are weak in securing the sources of the medicines that they supply. So you can have a very good storage practices, but often you are not able to choose your supplier according to strict quality criteria. So we have a kind of unsecured supply in general in unregulated countries. And this links to ethics. I can really say that sometimes our partners, they are facing an ethical dilemma. They know that they have to buy locally somewhere. They know that there is not the perfect place where to buy, to be sure about the quality. Still you have to buy. So you are often constantly doing this risk-benefit assessment for other people, for vulnerable patients. So this is really very ethical. If I have to give 4 quick messages. Firstly, I would say we have globalized everything, so we have also globalized pharmaceutical distribution and manufacturer, but we didn't globalize good, strict regulation. So that's why people in vulnerable population are more exposed to risk of poor quality medicines. I think there may be a role here for the drug regulatory authorities in the north, maybe to create collaboration with the colleagues in the south for training, for capacity building, and maybe also for sharing reliable information. Sometimes we know here that that manufacturer is not doing good, but our colleague in Congo has not the capacity to go and assess it. So this information sharing would help a lot. Another question is more for Susanne. I think I looked recently at some policy documents about antimicrobial resistance, and I noticed that the risk linked to poor quality medicine is often ignored. So it would be also useful to look at why policymakers often forget about this. Maybe we are not involving enough politicians, but it's great that they are here. Maybe in the public health masters, we are not explaining the future decision makers that this is a real problem. So there is maybe something to do. And the last point, I think there is a big role that the international cooperation and the international funding agencies could play. Of course, in an ideal world, all the drug regulatory authority would be stringent, would have enough resources to secure the market in their countries. Today, in most low and middle income countries, it's not the case. The big buyers, cooperation, NGO, funders, they could orient the market. It happened in the HIV field. At a certain time point, Global Fund and other big buyers, they say, we will only buy WHO pre-qualified generics. And that puts the level up. Now, if we all played the same game, also for antibiotics, also for paracetamol, for cough syrups, maybe we can make a change. That was the message.
Thank you very much. And Barbara, I guess that you don't represent the uninterested politicians that Rafaela is talking about.
No, I'm very interested. And this is complicated. There are a mixture of questions which need different solutions at different levels. And you have to really split them up and see how they can be solved. I mean, if you look into demand, you have one group where I would put addicts and bodybuilders. That's one. Then we have the demand in developing countries which can't get hold of essential medicines and therefore might find these false medicines with their risk as a solution. Then we have the demand by Swedish patients who want to get hold of medicines which we haven't approved in Sweden, but they read about it on the internet or heard about them from relatives or other people, and therefore go to the internet or to friends to try to get them. Then we have an astonishing lack of knowledge in the physicians group. I was astonished that so many didn't know really about the problem. So then coming to what should we do? Well, we have to sort out the legislation because things are decided on with different types of legislation, and they, I mean, you can sneak out to get very low punishment, so to speak, if you go in through one door, and much more if you go through another door, and that is really a thing which we politicians have to look into. We also have to look into who has the responsibility for what, and how can they then collaborate in an efficient way. So I think this day has been very, very important for us to tackle the problem in an efficient way. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Henrik Rasmussen. It will be thrilling to hear your perspective.
Thank you. I'm, of course, a representative of law enforcement in Sweden. My office is the IP crime unit at the National Prosecution Department here in Stockholm. And IP crime stands for intellectual property crime, of course. Most of you know that. IPR or IP crime is my field of work. There are a number of different laws that cover illegal trade in medicine in Sweden. One of them is the law on trade in medicine, which deals with which states that it's illegal to trade in medicine if you don't have a license. Then there are a number of drug offenses if the medicine has a narcotic part in it. It's the IPR infringement side with the trademark laws and the patent laws. And also there are a number of smuggling offenses that come into play. And so this is one of the problems. There are at least 4 laws covering illegal medicine or some aspects of illegal medicine. Within the Swedish Prosecution Authority, illegal trade in medicine is generally dealt with at a local level, without specialized prosecutors, and also without specialized police to produce the investigations. But there are a few exceptions when it comes to illegal trade in medicine. One exception is the large-scale internet-based illegal pharmacies that could be investigated and prosecuted by national experts, such as the case that Lina here presented to us before. Another exception is IPR infringements in medicines. If there is an element of IPR involved in a case of illegal trade of medicines, which is usually or often the case, specialized police and prosecutors will be involved in the investigation. And in Sweden, there are 4 prosecutors specialized in IPR, myself one of them, with national jurisdiction. And so if an IPR crime is being prosecuted, there's also a newly found national court for IPR crime and also IPR civil litigation. So there will be, if there is an IPR element involved in illegal trade in medicine, there will be specialized police, prosecutors, and courts dealing with it, which is good, I think. However, there's also a problem with this, and that is if there's no IPR involved, it's up to the local prosecutors, the local police, and the local courts to deal with it. And there is no specialization on that level. And also, if there is an element of IPR, there's another threshold that could be an obstacle in the tackling of illegal medicine. And that is formal requirements put into the IPR laws that says that there has to be a formal complaint from the rights holder for a prosecutor to prosecute IPR crime, including illegal medicine crime. And also there has to be a considerable public interest for prosecution to take place. Of course, when we're talking about illegal medicine, the public interest side is not very difficult. There is usually a public interest in prosecuting illegal medicines, trade in illegal medicines. But the other side, the requirement of a formal complaint from the rights holders, that's a problem. In the 8 years I've been dealing with IP crime, I haven't had one complaint from a pharmaceutical company, not one in 8 years. And this stops me from doing anything. My hands are tied. However, there's still the chance of finding an interested local policeman, local prosecutor, to take the other side of the illegal trade, the dealing with the medicine without a license, maybe the drug trafficking part of illegal medicines. But that's another story. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wonder about the problems of a prosecutor in this case. Do you often take cases to court and you can't get a conviction? And what is the biggest problem?
I would say the biggest problem is to get the parties, the infringed parties, the rights holders interested and wanting to carry out the whole process of the investigation, and also coming to court and testify as to all the different aspects of IPR. But as long as we get the case ready for court, prosecute and get it to court, we usually succeed.
Okay, thank you. I think we will skip you Erik just for the moment and go on. Do you have any additional comments, Erik the second?
Well, I got the chance to talk quite a lot already. One thing that strikes me today is the extreme complexity of this problem, and it might not even be accurate to call it a problem, but rather a set of problems that overlap in quite different ways. And I think the sort of definitional issues that some of the speakers have been addressing are extremely important. I mean, what do we call this phenomenon? And depending on what we call it, we will include certain things and not others, and that will have great consequences for how we deal with it legally, I think, but also how we look at it ethically. So that's just to sort of underscore the importance of sort of being careful with the terminology here. Yeah.
In SMER, we are obsessed with ethical dilemmas. What would be the biggest ethical dilemma here? Because you started with saying that this may seem very straightforward from an ethical point of view. What are the dilemmas?
Well, I think one potential dilemma that the first member of this panel mentioned would be one, I think, important dilemma to think about, namely what do you do when you can't be absolutely sure that the product you're getting is of good quality, but you still need to be able to offer a product or a drug for patients. So, yeah, I think that's one dilemma, certainly.
Margareta, trying to give the professionals perspective.
Well, thank you. By training, I'm a medical doctor. I'm a specialist in social medicine, dealing with health problems in the society, and in family medicine or general practice, dealing with health problems in individuals. So I've been a general practitioner for very many years. I won't count them. But anyway, I work 1 day a week in the middle of Malmö, Sweden's third city, in a low-income, poor country area, with a lot of patients with a lot of problems, and very often a background in another country. So I'm often thinking about, during the day-to-day, what can you do on that level? On the everyday medical practice level. And I'm thinking that we are discussing a developed country where we had good access to drugs, we had good access to pharmacies, and we have a limit to how much you ever pay in 1 year for all the drugs you need, independently of how expensive they are. 2,200 kroner, I think it is right now, meaning less than 200 kroner a month. However, it can be expensive for patients during the first month of a new year. It's 12 months. So some patients try to find ways to get those drugs that they get prescribed in a cheaper way. And they might be victims to bad drugs because they might order them from some place where the quality is not guaranteed. Quite a few of my patients also have a habit of taking a lot of drugs. They come from the Middle East, for example, and also from Poland, and have had more prescriptions there than they get here, and another view on what is appropriate. In Turkey, you would get antibiotics for anything, preferably by injections, and we say this disease will limit itself. Of course, there's a conflict between ways of looking at disease and health. But still, there you still have a discussion between the medical professionals and the patients. But we have a large group of patients who want medications that the doctors or the nurses won't prescribe. And typically, it's been mentioned here, typically it is sleeping pills, pills for potency maybe, and painkillers, narcotic painkillers. They can be bought at the square close to our healthcare center illegally, but they can also, for a high price, but they can also be bought from internet. And they can be the real thing or a bad thing. So what I think from listening, and I have read and talked to people recently, including our questionnaire, and I was quite glad that so many knew about it. I had not expected that, Barbara. I think that there's a lot to do to help professionals, all kinds of health professionals, to discuss these things with people they meet and to be better on communications, telling, why do I take this stand? Why do I think you're better off without? What are the risks you get? And to be able to do that, all the health professionals need knowledge and communication skills. Knowledge is not enough. Information is not what we want to give. We want people to understand, and that requires a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. One of you in the team, I don't know if someone of you brought up the question, you must have respect for other medical cultures, yes. And that it must be a conflict.
Yes, it is.
How do you handle it?
I think that there is a lot of research around these things. People, like the Turkish people who came here 20 years ago, they adapted to our way of doing it within some years. You learn where you are and how you reason here. So that is one part. But the other thing is to say, I understand that you think so, but I have another opinion. And I understand what your doctor has said, but I think you would be better off. And I'm sorry, I can't do this because it's against what I have learned and what is recommended here. And then I give the patient the chance to say, I trust in you, or I'll go home and get my medicine. And then I have to respect that as well.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, Erik Blom, you are not a solution to the entire problem, but to part of the problem.
I hope so. I'm a representative for the SMEDPAC project, and this is a project that we have launched to help Swedish organizations and companies to comply with this FMD directive that was launched early in 2011. In the project, we have gathered all the value chain from medical producers through wholesalers, distributors. We have also incorporated the customs, the police, we have the MPA and lots of other actors in this project, and we end up with pharmacies and hospitals. The aim of the project is to secure the legal supply chains of medical products, medical preparates. And we do that. One way to do it is that we have developed packages, as we have a packaging research institute from the beginning. And we have 3 families of packages. We have folding box packages, and we have 2 kinds of plastic jar packages that is substantially more secure than the packages usually used. We saw earlier today these packages. There were 2 examples, and it was very difficult to see which one was a fake and which was what was genuine. And we work with panels to evaluate the security features of packages, so it should be intuitive, clear that which is the genuine one and the fake one. And we work in this project with a quadruple helix thinking. We have research and innovation, we have authorities, we have companies, and the consumer. as we use consumers for panel questions, then we can use the consumer's point of view. And we also work according to the WHO intentions. We have international solutions, and we have cooperation along the whole value chain, and we also want to involve the consumer. And we think that when we have when the time is passing, the directive has now been settled, I think it was the 9th of February 2016, and it should be in full effect on the 9th of February 2019. And then the whole line of business has to comply with this directive in all the Europe, all the member countries. And we think that we can contribute a bit to this, both in Sweden and international in Europe, and perhaps also in other parts of the world, to raise the security. So that's my
Thank you.
opinion.
Thank you very much. Then it's open for question from the audience. And first, Anders Milton, you are there. Because you reminded me in the coffee break that there is one important voice missing here, and that's the WHO Collaborating Center. Could you please tell us?
It's Uppsala Monitoring Center, where I happen to be the chairman of the board for the time being. It's a World Health Organization collaborating body that was founded, 40 plus years ago, after WHO Geneva had asked a number of countries to see if one could set up a center monitoring side effects of drugs worldwide. So Uppsala Monitoring Center has agreements with, I think, 120 medical products agencies around the world, and gets information from them free of charge and sends back all the information that has been run through the system, as it were. And the organization doesn't get any money from the state anymore since 2000, 16 years ago. Lives on the money that the organization, the products that we sell to clinical research organizations and the pharmaceutical industry. And it's an organization that within the algorithms that we have and the reporting very well could work. And we do also work with medicines that are not working because they are falsified or spurious or not effective. Because when we have as it were, an outbreak of non-functioning drugs, that would be reported by the National Medical Products Agency, and then we would see it in our systems, as it were. And the algorithms are such that you don't need 10,000 cases. If you expect to have 0, it's enough if you get 5 or 10. Then the alarm bells ring, as it were, and the system can look into what has happened. So I think that we could collaborate, and I should say that the World Health Organization in Geneva appoints half of the board. The Swedish government appoints the other half, including the chairman of the board. And so I think that there is room for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? May I bring up the role of Sweden in the international arena? We have heard now about actions taken in the country, especially by the Medical Products Agency. But what role does Sweden play in the international arena? I'm looking at you, Pernette, Bourdillon. Could you comment on that from a WHO perspective? Is Sweden an active player or not?
Sweden, like all countries, has got an important role to play. There's a global role to be played at a political level as part of a WHO member state. There exists a WHO member state mechanism where Sweden can perfectly have its voice either independently or throughout the EU representation. And Sweden, of course, has an important role to play even within the EU. There's something that hasn't been mentioned today, but it's the existence of what is called parallel trade within the EU of medicines. It's something that is perfectly legal, but within the European Union, you're allowed to buy medicines in countries where they are generally cheaper due to a variety of reasons, but generally it's going to be medicines from the southern countries of Europe, and to sell them for more expensive prices in countries where you sell medicines for more expensive, generally in the northern countries. So typically Sweden would be one of those countries. And when you do parallel trade, when wholesalers buy medicines in one country to sell them in another, they have to recondition the packaging of these medicines so that they are in line with the national standards. For example, they have to put them in Swedish language. And the longer a supply chain is, the more probability, the stronger the likelihood that there is a weak link along the supply chain. So parallel trade is one amongst other, of course, possible entrance point of falsified and substandard medicines in the Swedish market. But that is just one amongst others, and it's not a bad system in itself amongst others. So Sweden has got a role to play, both at an EU level and at a national level, of course. And there's all the research centers as Uppsala Monitoring Center, of course, which is very important.
You are mentioning what we can do and what are the possible entries into the system. What are we actually doing? Do you have any? Can you rank us?
No. I'm very sorry. No, I can't.
Barbara is very active and also in the international arena.
I'm on a patient and a consumers working party linked to the European Medicine Agency, EMA. And what's been done there is more to inform the members, the patient organizations and consumer organizations about falsified medicines, to watch out, not to use the internet, but to use the prescribed medicines. That's what I see from EMA. Anders Milton was talking about the WHO collaborating center in Uppsala. A similar drug monitoring is the responsibility of EMA within the European Union, and I'm not aware of reports coming in there for falsified medicines, but I'm trying to find out. They are also part of the WHO monitoring system, but we might find reports there, and as Anders says, you don't need thousands. It's enough with a few. But EMA is very much underlining this communication with patient organizations and thereby users to be aware of the risk of using medicines which haven't been through the drug regulatory agency's control.
Henrik Rasmussen, may I ask you, what kind of international role in the law enforcement arena does Sweden play?
Well, in the specific field of IPR, we have quite an important role, I would like to say. We're one of the few countries where we have such a specialized law enforcement system working with the police, the prosecution, and now also the courts, all streamlined to deal with IPR. And that's quite unique in the whole world, I'd like to say. And so we take part in numerous networks in Europe and also outside of Europe to enhance our knowledge and enhance others' knowledge in this field.
Yeah, and for the non-IPR aspects of falsified medicines?
Yeah, I would say maybe the situation is the opposite. Mm-hmm. We are quite weak, I'd say, naturally in that field.
I can say from our SMEDPAC view, we are just going in 1 month to start a visit and cooperation with the Secure Farm, the German initiative in this case. Perhaps some of you are known about that. There's a German initiative about 40 companies, I think it is, and 20 medical companies in this, and they have a good solution for this serialization problem, and we are going to try to get some kind of cooperation with them.
Margareta, do you have any insights into the role of Sweden in international professional organizations in this matter?
No.
Or does anyone else in the audience have it? Susanne, you probably have.
Yeah,
Please,
I'm really, maybe they are already doing it because I'm not prepared about what Sweden is doing, but looking a little bit beyond Europe, I think something which is extremely helpful is to support the WHO pre-qualification program, because this is really something which has shown to be extremely effective to improve the quality of medicines for some major diseases. And there, of course, Pernette will know the details better than me, but to have European countries contributing financially and with the expertise of auditors to that project is going to improve the quality of medicine at a global level. And today we know that poor quality medicines in China or in Africa are going to have an impact on resistance at global level. So we can do it also for our own interest, to be active. So that's what I would suggest for Sweden, to consider supporting this project very practically and pragmatically.
Well, that's, again, a potential. I just wanted to what I'm not quite clear after today's presentations and discussions are what groups in Sweden are actually using these drugs. I think it's quite clear that in poor countries, poor people have this as a solution. I don't know if you agree, but in this country, what are the target groups for this? You mentioned some of it, Margareta. Please.
Well, I think that one group is immigrants who want to have what they are used to, which is I really respect, but sometimes don't think is right medically, but that's enough. And there's one group that doesn't get what they want because we think it's bad for them, like sedatives, sleeping pills, narcotic anergetics. And then there's one group that wants lifestyle medicines, including steroids and Viagra and other drugs that maybe they find too expensive or can't get here. So those three groups I see all the time. There might be others.
Is there an ethical dilemma between autonomy, patients' autonomy, and I think that perhaps the antibiotics area is a very good example where you have an overriding goal of keeping the consumption down. But there is a very strong urge for autonomy in this area. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I would like to say, because when I was a young doctor, everyone wanted antibiotics all the time, especially for their children. As soon as they had a cough, they wanted antibiotics. And it took some years, and then I remember like 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, parents started saying, does he really have to have antibiotics? A sort of skepticism against it. Mm-hmm. So something happens, but then we meet new groups who haven't learned this lesson yet. And then we have this ethical dilemma, I think, of explaining to make people feel that they're in good hands, even though we deny them what they think is the best treatment. And that's a dilemma. For me, as a general practitioner, the answer is, you don't get it today. Call tomorrow or the day after if you need. They usually don't.
I think your question, who are the users, where is the demand, is very, very important to find out in order to then get the solutions about what to do. And I think your presentation here was very, very important to us, and we need a more full coverage. When I was at the Swedish Association of Senior Citizens, we made a study asking our members what medicines are you using? And we found that almost 50% were using natural medicines. And we asked, do you tell your doctor? Oh, no, we don't. Some did, but most of them didn't. And after that, we informed them that you should tell your doctor because they might clash with the other prescribed medicines. It's for your safety. And I think we need more data here about the patients here.
It would be interesting to know if our fellow senior citizens are consumers of these internet medicines as well, illegal medicines. Erik?
Well, concerning the question you raised, whether there is a dilemma between autonomy and safety, I think to some extent there might be in cases where there are different cultural practices as we have been discussing, but it's also important to remember that in many other cases, I think there might be an apparent dilemma, but maybe not a genuine dilemma, because presumably autonomy is about getting what it is you really want. And in most cases, we can assume that patients will want drugs that actually help them. And in many cases of low quality or poor quality medicines, they will actually not help them. So it's not required from the point of view of respect for autonomy that people should get drugs that won't help them, because that's not what they really want, I think.
But isn't the question with autonomy that patients want health, but it's the way to health that you might have different opinions about. And the patient, from my point of view as a medical professional, would be that they don't know what would help them. And I might seem that I don't respect them if I say that. And here is, how does this person need health, reach health? That's the sort of main question. And I know some things about the dangers. And can I encourage autonomy and still say that's not good?
There's a communication challenge.
Yeah.
It's not about the autonomy, but I think we really need some comparative studies also to know to see what we are looking for in Sweden. It's always easier actually to go abroad and looking at other cultures. And I just want to mention a study of one of my colleagues in South Africa, and she's done studies with people buying medicine, marketplaces, internet and so on. And it turned out that people, they very well knew that it was not the right substances in, let's say, antibiotica. But they were saying, okay, a little amount of it is better than nothing. And that, I mean, and that has terrible consequences for the multi-resistance bacteria. And I think that people here in Sweden think the same thing. But I mean, we need to find out. We need to do fieldwork, ethnography. But I wouldn't be surprised if people would say here also that, okay, maybe that's not as much as it should be in the medicine, but it's better than nothing. So we really have to find out what people think and how they relate to what is health. So, ethnography and comparative studies.
There is certainly a big need for more knowledge. Are you the only scientific group in Sweden working on this? In the academic world?
In our... Did you look at me now?
Your group in Lund.
Yeah, if we work, we hope to do that.
Yeah,
we started
but are you the only players in this?
Yes, I don't know anyone else who is working on that. But what I think also, and that's linked a little bit to what Erik Malmqvist said before, that we really have to look at this as, it's not only looking at fake falsified medicine, but it's really to looking at as a global problem, but it's a part of a bigger problem. So it's like falsified drugs. You have to compare it with, say, organ trafficking or with medical travel demand. Where is the demand? Where the demand is bigger than supply. It doesn't matter if it's medicine or treatments or whatever. So we really have to look at it in a bigger, from a bigger view and interdisciplinary work and work together with organizations, of course.
Roy Liu, did you have a comment?
I think many of us here today present, or maybe people present from the science, really natural science, or the science perspective, like we try to produce a new packaging or some new tools to identify those medicines for the public. But on the other hand, I think as Susanne has presented, all the medicines, they have social lives. And there's a reason why people go to the darknet to look for medicines. There's a reason people don't tell their doctors or to try to hide the secrets on their own. So it's not about the medicine, the medical effects itself. I think it's about people, there are social relations they want to keep. There are the health beliefs they believe in. So these are the social aspects we can dig into. And as also Eric II mentioned that we need to think that in a global concept. It's and also you asked the question like the Sweden is playing what kind of roles in this global era. I actually have a question, is that we do national research we keep the research in this, for example, in Sweden, and to which extent can we apply our lessons to other parts of the world? Because while we apply our lessons or our experiences, we need to consider the other cultures. Maybe these solutions won't work maybe in Southeast Asia or in Africa. So I think these are the cultural perspective we can give.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we will conclude this discussion by, you have now an opportunity to give, we will first go to you and then you can consider 1 minute each. Do you have any final comments?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the conclusion. With regards to the notion of the social lives of medicines, I think it would be maybe an interesting area of research to see which therapeutic categories of medicines have got more of a social life than another. Because I imagine, of course, that lifestyle medicines have got more of an independent social life, whereas more essential medicines would less have the case. I also think that people who buy medicines in less regulated environments are certainly less aware of the risks. Maybe they accept a certain part of risk, but they certainly might not accept all the risks. And in a very different environment to that of Sweden, but which might be similar to other places in Europe, a lot of people, when they go to the hospital, are sometimes requested to go and buy the medicines out of the hospital or outside of the healthcare facility and then bring them into the hospital. So this happens very frequently in poorer countries where you go to the hospital but you have to go there with your own medicines. And we have several cases of people who have actually died after the administration of falsified medicines in the context of a hospital because the doctor asked them to go buy the medicines outside and in a private pharmacy or in the market. But this is something that could very well happen, I suppose, in Sweden, if you have an important failure of the supply system. If somehow, for example, to my knowledge, it has never happened in Europe or in Sweden, but if, for example, you have a failure of the supply chain, and supposing you have falsified vaccines in France, the doctor asks you to go buy the vaccines at the pharmacy, and then the doctor is the one who administrates the vaccine to you. Hypothetically, if you had a failure of the supply chain, it could very well be a doctor administrating unknowingly a falsified vaccine. And I don't think that the ethnography of the purchase of the vaccine there would be similar to all the lifestyle drugs. And that's why I'm saying that it would be interesting to compare the different therapeutic categories as to the social lives of those medicine, because it would be different for each therapeutic category.
Thank you very much. Rafaela.
My God, 1 minute. I think, it's very difficult. You cannot fully secure your supply chains. The market is globalized now, so even the contaminated heparin reached the United States and caused deaths there. So I think there is a big need to reinforce the drug regulatory systems worldwide as a first as the first things. So in that sense, we spoke a lot of the patients. Maybe I'm too much thinking from a southern perspective, but patients must be informed, must be aware, they must be able to engage, they must also go to the barricade to say we want access to quality medicines. We don't have to put the final responsibility on them. This morning I came here with 2 KLM flights. They were operated by other companies. It was not KLM. I didn't go to check with the pilot, what is this aircraft, are you trained? I just trusted the system. I just trusted the state. So we should really aim at a world where everybody can trust the state that the quality has been ensured. Then, of course, we have different elements, not only culture, but health systems, social securities. But I think that's really the objective, to strengthen all the drug regulatory authorities worldwide and to secure the supply chain worldwide.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
Well, I will link to my introduction. There is such a mixture of questions which have come up here, so I have to sort them out and see where do we have to need more or change the legislation, who is responsible for what kind target groups in Sweden, what has to be done within the union and international and so on. And I'm not ready to have a full list of proposals here and now. I have to think it over.
Thank you, Henrik.
Thank you. We talked a lot about the importance of multidisciplinary views and how important it is to address this problem. And that is also very clear within the law enforcement world. I'm talking about customs, police, prosecution, and courts. It doesn't help if Lina Andersson's customs find and discovers a large internet pharmacy ring of illegal medicine if there isn't a prosecutor ready to pick it up and understand and prosecute. And so I think we need a more project-based view from law enforcement to deal with the problem and not just with this specific field of our own speciality, including my own. Thank you.
Erik Blom.
Okay, yes, we are going to focus on our specialities first. Of course, our recommendation is to have improved packaging where you can clearly identify if this is a fake product or if it's a genuine product, and that will represent every kind of package made of plastic and board and so on. And also one thing, I think that we must bring a better awareness to the consumer about this, so we can have some better information how to solve this problem and to be aware of there are fake medicines that is around. And one other thing that I think should be very beneficial to have a better control of the whole value chain. You have from medical producer all through every part down to the pharmacies and the hospitals. And then you can have a cooperation between all of them, because if you have a dialogue, then you can see it's not only a part to part from each part of the chain, that you can gather the whole chain and have discussions that will represent everything. And of course this will both be in Sweden and international, both in Europe and if we are aiming all over the world. And then to my colleague Henrik here, that we said, because there are, as we see it, I see it, too low. The punishments are far too low for this kind of crimes. If you have narcotics, then you have 10 years in jail or something like that. But if you fake medicine, correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps it's 3 months, 6 months, or a year at the height. But because the profit margins are in the same region, if you are dealing with cocaine or if you are dealing with lifestyle preparations, you have all, I think it's several thousand% that you can gain. But the punishments are too low. So but that's also one thing that should be beneficial, I think.
Thank you.
Well, I think I'll end with a kind of hooray for the project that Susanne and Margareta and colleagues are doing. I think there seems to be so very little known about this problem from the kind of patient or consumer perspective, and that we need that kind of knowledge perhaps especially to come back to this question of raising awareness. I mean, we need to know why do people buy or consume these products.
And I only agree with Erik. I won't repeat what he said. And we also must learn how to help people to communicate these things, period.